Good morning and welcome. So, as you all know, we are living in some really challenging times, and things are kind of hard for folks to deal with. And sometimes we need someone to just talk to help us sort through some of the chaos. Well, guess what? Today, I am happy to welcome a therapist to the mix to help give us some helpful tips. But you know what I like to do. Before we dive right into the conversation, I'd like to get you to know a little bit about my guest. And so I'm going to welcome Dulce and ask her to introduce herself and just give you a little background about herself, and then we'll get right into it. Good morning, Dulce. Welcome to the Defining You podcast.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I was born and raised in Venezuela. I define myself as a Latino immigrant therapist. I am a mom, a wife, a daughter, a friend, a sister, all of those things. And on top of that, I'm also a therapist. So the way I define it is my specialty, what I love to do the most, and what I think I do the best is working with women of color and from immigrant families, helping them putting themselves first, which is so challenging.
Yes, wonderful. So, can you also give us a little background of where you're from?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Venezuela. I am not sure how much you know about the situation in Venezuela and how much your audience knows. Unfortunately, is not good. However, I've been here for so long. I came here in 2001. So by the time I came here, things were not as bad. So I feel that my immigration story is not, like the typical Venezuelan immigration stories you might hear from people that have had to immigrate more recently.
Right.
Yes. So I came here after I graduated from high school. The plan was for me to come, learn English, and go back home. But I ended up applying for a scholarship without telling my parents. I got the scholarship, and fast forwarding 21 years later, I'm here.
Yes, you're in the United States of America, the land of opportunities, and you have found yourself and helping immigrants, and you speak multiple languages, which is great for someone like you who's also an immigrant, because Boston is also has a large immigrant community, and you call yourself, or you refer to yourself as the Latina immigrant therapist. Can you tell us what you do and who do you help?
What I do is, so I am a licensed mental health counselor, right? That would be like the fancy title. It's LMHC, which is like so many letters. But basically, I'm a therapist. So what I do is clinical therapy, and that means the type of therapy that happens when someone is looking for outside help, right? When you're not feeling well, when you're not, when something is not quite right. That's when people typically look for therapy. However, my invitation, and we can talk about that a little later, is not to let things get super bad in order to get therapy. It's look for therapy almost like as a preventive thing, right? Like almost as a tool that you can use in order to prevent things to get really, really bad, which in my experience, that's when many people tend to look for it. But that's what I do.
You refer to yourself as, because you could just say I'm a therapist, but you were very distinct when you describe yourself as a Latina immigrant therapist. And I just wanted to know, why was that important for you to refer to yourself that way?
Okay. Yeah, there's absolutely intentionality behind that. And the reason why is because I think that as women, many of us struggle taking care of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
putting ourselves first, thinking that we deserve, setting boundaries, dealing with guilty feelings, all of that. However, when you're a woman of color and when you're an immigrant woman, all of that has a different flavor, kind of like more spicy, intensified.
Mm-hmm.
Like it has a different component.
Right.
So that's why it's so important for me to say that and to name it.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my experience, speaking for myself as a client, I've worked with different therapists, and the one person that I identified the most with, and the one person that I bonded, it's been a different experience with my
Mm-hmm.
Latina immigrant therapist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that's the case for everyone, but I do think that it's important for us to point it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's that cultural component,
Right.
that sometimes it's very important for some people.
So can you talk about the challenges that they are facing in particular and why you think it's important for someone like you who probably can better relate to help them through some of those issues that they're going through?
I guess I would like to answer that question to start out with some of the challenges that there are in even considering the possibility of going to therapy, right? Because
Yes.
of all the stigma that exists around mental health, which I would like to say it's getting better,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not where we want it to be. So something that I always try to remind people is please keep in mind that you do not need to convince anyone you need therapy.
Right.
You do not need to convince anyone that you need help. Because many times I get calls from people that say, listen, should I keep this from my family?
Mm-hmm.
Or what can I do, right? And I think it's important for us to, first and foremost, give ourselves permission to even explore that as a possibility. What
Right.
if
Mm-hmm.
I look for a therapist? What if I talk to my PCP about referrals? Even like opening up to that as an actual option. So when it goes to answer your question about struggles, I do think that, and again, I don't want to generalize, but from my experience, both personal and professional, working with a lot of women of color, a lot of immigrants, there's all these expectations, right? That and these expectations can come from two places. Some of them are external expectations, but many of them are internal expectations about what we expect from ourselves. And
Right.
sometimes those expectations can be really, really high.
That's the immigrant story. We have great expectations. We come to the land of opportunities, and we think we can do it all. And you said earlier you don't want to generalize things, but I think you are very qualified as an immigrant to speak on those experiences because you're exposed to them maybe more so than the average person who may not have an immigrant background, and you understand the story. So I think don't feel sorry that you're saying this, because there's a lack, and sometimes we don't always, as immigrants, I am also an immigrant, so some immigrants do not always have the information, do not always know where to get the information, do not always feel comfortable to speak to people who do not look like them, because there are certain stereotypes that we make about people who are not like us. And so having someone like you who can make that level playing field from the very beginning is encouragement in itself to help people to open up. And when you talk about people not wanting their families to know that they are seeing a therapist, because there is such a stigma associated with mental health. And so for having someone like you to educate people, because I think where we come from, therapy is not something that is normal. Therapy is not people that we see. We deal with our issues on our own. So when you come to this great country and you learn so many things, and you see that there are tools that that's available for people to help them with some of the issues that they're going through, and to have someone like you to identify herself and say, I am a Latina immigrant therapist. I think that is huge, because people can find you. It's easy to find you, because if you can say I'm a therapist, and people don't know your background, but if I'm a Latina woman and I want help, it's recommended that maybe you should talk to someone. I can look you up and I say, you know what? I don't know who she is, but at least we have a connection, and maybe I should probably approach this person. So I think helping out diverse individuals and helping them to overcome some kind of racial and cultural trauma is very important. So can you talk to us about what is racial and cultural trauma?
Have you seen the movie Encanto?
No, I have not. I've heard a lot about it, but I have
You've
not.
heard about it.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you, Helena, if you can make the time and almost like look at it as, okay, I'm going to watch this. It's not, I'm going to watch this movie. Think about it as, I'm going to watch this documentary about intergenerational trauma. Mm-hmm. So please look at it from that perspective. And then please reach out to me and let me know what you think.
You know what, Dulce? One of my colleagues, I'm co-chairing the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee at my job. And one of the people on the steering committee actually sent that video. And we were thinking of, should we show it to the staff? So I haven't looked at it, so no, I have access to it. So I'll definitely take a look and get back to you on that. So what can you tell us about that in terms of the question I just asked? How is that relatable?
Yeah. So it's when I saw that movie, it touched so many aspects of my own immigration story, of my own story related to trauma and race. And I have to be honest with you. Very soon, I realized that I wasn't the only one. Mm-hmm. So the impact that movie had on me was so big that, to make a long story short, right now I'm leading a movie and mental health series. Mm-hmm. Talking about intergenerational trauma with Encanto.
Oh my goodness.
So, yes.
Intergenerational trauma. That's a whole other story.
It's heavy, right?
Yes.
It's heavy, but it's so connected to what you asked about racial trauma and about all these things that happened. So what is that? Is the type of trauma. Well, first and foremost, many of us that are suffering from trauma, we don't know it.
Right.
We just don't know it because we've normalized it so much. And it became such a, like a regular part of our life. It's like, oh, what do you mean? That thing is trauma? I didn't know. I've been like living with that since I was like 4, right?
Right. It's part of my life. What are you talking about?
It's a part of my life.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's even being able to look at that with one of the key things that I always try to include is compassion and self-compassion.
Yes.
Because it can be painful. It can be hard to learn about these things. There might be a part of us that can feel a lot of resentment towards people that we love, because it's how did you let that happen? How come you didn't, do something different? And it's like, that's where compassion comes handy, right? So it's they were doing the best they could with the resources they had at the time.
Right.
How can you feel that compassion? And most importantly, self-compassion too, because it's difficult. It's difficult to uncover all of that. It's difficult to see that as a part of yourself, and to make the mindful decision to say, I see that and I want to do something about it. Or perhaps I see that and I'm not quite ready, but I know it's there, and I know that I need to start thinking about it. So those two elements for me have been life-changing personally, and I always try to incorporate that with the people I work with.
Wonderful. So what are some of the behaviors you've seen in women of color, and especially immigrants, that you probably perceived as a direct reaction to racial or cultural trauma, but they might not see it that way? Can you give us some examples without naming names so that people can just understand what that means when we talk about racial and cultural trauma?
One thing, and please tell me what you think about this, but I do think that there's this element, and there's many layers to it. So I always think about this almost like a lasagna, right? Like there's so many layers that come into place.
I like your analogy.
Oh yes, it's like imagine like this humongous lasagna, but perfectionism. So it's this need to be perfect. It's this need to
oh yes,
almost like, how can I show them that I belong here? How can I show them by doing anything it takes, even if that takes working 80 hours a week and not getting paid for it, even if it takes responding to that email at 11:30 at night because I cannot wait. Like I would not be able to sleep if I wait until 7 in the morning, right? And it's that fake perfectionism, because in reality, you're paying a big price for that. But that might be a part of this trauma about not being enough, not belonging, having to prove everyone that, oh, you do deserve to be there. And there's many other factors that
play into
it, but I think that's something that need to do more, right? Like that need to, even though you're doing so many things, it's never enough. It doesn't seem to be enough. You need it's not able, like you're not able to even savor what you've created, because you're already thinking about what is the next thing, what else do you need to do. So being in that constant search for what's next, not even allowing yourself the time to be in that moment and really enjoy.
It's okay to enjoy your life, yourself. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It certainly does. I probably need to do a session with you. Because sometimes, and I'm educating myself about this, because I also had my own fears about, I don't need a therapist. I don't want people to think, but just having that conversation, it's okay. It's okay to have that conversation. Sometimes you never know the things that you unravel. You go for one thing and then you come out with a completely different perspective because you thought one thing, and then by just having that guidance from that therapist really helped to put you back on track and put things into perspective. So tell me, how important is it for immigrants and women of color to understand the role culture plays in their own mental health? This is important.
That's such a big question, and that's a question that I've had for so long, that I have this workshop, and it's called Becoming the Sculptor of Your Life, Managing the Messages That Are in Yours. Because I feel that, and we all get this, not, you don't have to be a woman, you don't have to be a woman of color, you don't have to be an immigrant. We're constantly bombarded with all these messages.
Oh, yes.
But very, very, it's very unlikely when we pause and when we ask ourselves, wait a minute, is this even something that what do I think about this? Do I agree with this? Is this something that belongs to me? Is this something that perhaps was passed on to me from, you name it, my friends, my colleagues, my family? So can you ask yourself, where is that coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Can you even question your thoughts? Because that was like life changing for me. Like I remember the time that I've heard for the first time, not all your thoughts are true. I was like, what? Like, what is that about? but yet we treat most of them as if they were true,
Right.
especially those thoughts that said, you're not enough, you're so stupid, I cannot believe you said this, you messed that up like big time. So those, many times, those are the thoughts that we believe the most.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I feel that for women of color and for women that come from immigrant families, it's so important to, first of all, take that pause, right? Like take that pause where you can even, I know this is a podcast, but I would love to do an exercise. The people that are listening, I'm going to describe what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
So please tell me if this is too complicated, and we can absolutely stop at any point.
No, I mean, I said I have a therapist in house today, so somebody in the audience might totally need what you're about to do right now. So let's go for it.
Okay, so this is an exercise. I love this exercise. I know we might look silly when we do it, but I promise that we'll make a point. So right now I have my hand in front of my face, really close to my face. Imagine that my hand is that thought that is absolutely consuming me. It's taking over me. It's that one thing that I think of when I wake up. That thing that I cannot stop thinking all throughout the day before going to bed. And there's nothing else I can see because it's so close to my face. The minute I say, but wait a minute, is this even true? I automatically make space.
Mm-hmm.
And by making space, so my hand right now, it's not too close to my face. I have more space and I can see what's around me. And I can see that option and that option. And oh, wait, I did not see that before. And it might be that too. So I can see all these different alternatives. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think many women of color and from immigrant families struggle with, because we do not allow ourselves to see those options. And certainly society doesn't make it any easier.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that job that it takes a lot of intentionality and effort.
That's the word, intentionality. Yes. Oh my goodness, Dulce, you're really good at that stuff. So can you give us some advice for women of color who may want to just break free from these trauma-related patterns?
Probably most of the things I'm going to say, you already know. These are not going to be new. It's just like maybe like a different, like reframe or looking at it from a different lens. But there's a part of you that might be disappointed because these are things that you already, you've heard before. And these are things that even though they might sound little, and by little I mean simple, we tend to underestimate it. Right? Mm-hmm. So the one thing that I think it's so important is listen to your body. Mm-hmm. It seems to me that for many of us, it's so hard to have that connection to our bodies. Right?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, you were asking about symptoms, behaviors. It's not normal. It's not normal to feel absolutely tired when you wake up, at 6 a.m. It's not normal to have constant migraines. It's not normal to have these symptoms. So our bodies are always speaking to us.
Yes.
And when we don't listen, they get louder. Right? They get louder until, we say like, and I love how so many of us, and I do think there's a big cultural component with this too, because it doesn't only happen with therapists, it can happen with doctors. So you might say, yeah, like my stomach have been hurting for the past 2 months, but if it hurts more, I'll go to the doctor. Or, it's not as bad. Like if it gets really bad and I can't walk, I call the doctor. And even then, you might like push it a little bit, right? Like you might be like, yeah, I cannot, like I haven't been able to eat, but I have 2 meetings. So if I feel worse, after those 2 meetings,
oh my goodness,
I'll go to urgent care, because right now the doctor is not even enough. Like it got to urgent care level. So listen to your body and learn to have that connection with your body, which is something that we don't prioritize. Many of us
oh my
have
goodness.
forgotten about it.
That is absolutely so true. Some of the things you're saying, and I know you said, some people might be disappointed, but I don't think anything you've said today is going to disappoint anyone. Yes, we may look at these things that, oh, I know that, but are you acting on what you know? Are you doing what you know you should be doing? And so when you talk about the level of the intensity of the things that we may feel, if we wait when it gets really bad, and at that time there might not be much that can be done for us. For example, as immigrants, sometimes we don't go to the doctor unless we really have to. We don't think we think we can handle this. We think we can take care of things on our own. It's just like you saying, like sometimes people feel guilty that they need to go to work and they have to make the money. But if you are not well, if you are not healthy, you can easily be replaced. So I think it's important for people to understand what their value is and what their worth is, so that people can really begin to take better care of themselves. Because why do we want to wait to go to urgent care? Why do we have to do? And I think it really goes back to our experiences and our cultural backgrounds, and working hard, and going all day without a meal because this is what we do. We are strong, but that's not being strong. Taking care of yourself and doing the things that will put you in a good position so that you can live a healthy, full life. So I think it's important for us to understand that the work will get done, but the work cannot get done, or whatever it is that is going on in your life will not be able to get done if you're not taking care of the things that you need to take care of, like your mental health is so important. So
absolutely. And just I would add something else to that, right? To that mix. And there's even an element of pride.
Oh, talk about that.
Right? Like you can, many people, and I was one of them. Like it's taken me a lot of work to get out of that mindset, but it was like almost like this element of pride, like, oh, I haven't stopped, I haven't eaten, and it's like 4:30, but I've been so busy that I haven't had lunch. And I'm telling you, because that's good. Like, I'm proud of that
right.
I haven't had lunch yet. So there's that element of pride, which is even worse, right?
Yeah, you are right up my street, Dulce, because yesterday I had lunch at 4 o'clock. I was so busy. So while you may say we already know those things, but are we acting on them to do the right things? And I think it's important that you mention those things to just remind us those are little things that we need to, that we can do, so we don't get into a situation where we are mentally strained, So
little, but not so little,
right? So for the purpose of the audience that's with us today, who may want to, based on what you've said, finally put themselves first and to kind of live the life they were meant to lead, what advice would you have for them so they can begin stepping into their own voice and power?
I see with the people I work with, kind of like some patterns, right? Like some elements that keep popping up in different ways. One of them is guilt. The guilt is there so often in different areas. It's just there. Another one is difficulty setting boundaries.
Oh, that's a big one.
Right? Like culturally, it's like, what do you mean? Like, that's being disrespectful. You would never do that. And there's like difficulty discerning that piece of you that feels you're not enough, that piece of you that feels the only reason why they call you is because they did not find anyone else, or your option F on the list. So those three things make it really hard for you to put yourself first. And I would say one of the most important things is, how can you feel that you are where you need to be? How can you feel that, yes, you deserve to be here? Yes, you deserve better things.
Yes.
Because something that happens, and please tell me what you think about this, Helena. It has happened to me personally, is that guilt can make it so hard for us to want more, right? For me, so something that I've been um, daily working with for the past 2 years is, it's okay for me to feel grateful and want more things. Because there was this piece of me that was like, okay, so I came here, I own a home, I went to school, I have my license, I have my family, we're all healthy. What type of person am I if I want more? What type of person am I if I want more things, right? And it's knowing and remembering that it's okay. You can be grateful for all these things that, by the way, you work really hard towards to. Right? That did not happen overnight.
It's okay.
But we forget. We forget.
Yes.
And it's okay for you to want more. It's okay for you to open up these paths that, by the way, are not just for you, but are also for other Latina immigrants, down the road, and for my daughters, and for. So I would say, please remember that it's okay to want more. It's okay to want better things. It's okay to want to be happier. It's okay to want to live a more peaceful life.
Yes. Yes.
It's okay to. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay not to want drama. Like there's a lot of drama sometimes, and it's okay for you to say, you know what, I don't want any drama, and that's why I'm choosing
to remove yourself.
To remove myself, and I'm not gonna go to that family party, right? Whatever, even if it's whatever it might be, even if it's like a baptism, and we, many times we wouldn't relate necessarily a baptism with trauma, with drama, but there's a lot of drama sometimes.
There's a lot of things that happen around those things, those family gatherings, those family events where you haven't seen someone, but there's an issue that you probably shouldn't be talking about it at this specific event. And so things happen. So I clearly understand, to keep your own peace of mind, you make a decision and you do. It's very important for us to do what is best for us sometimes. And I like the fact that you talk about the guilt, because sometimes we do things out of guilt, and almost every time when you do things out of guilt, it hurts you more than anything.
You pay a price.
I mean, I feel like I hear you speaking, and it's like this thing is inside of you. So you sound so passionate about this. What is it about being a therapist that attracted you to that role?
Yeah, you know what? I've always was one of those people that if I was standing in the street, like someone would come and talk to me about very personal things, right? Like, and all of a sudden the conversation got like super deep, and I'm telling you this, I was like an adolescent, and this would happen. As I told you, I was born and raised in Venezuela, and people very close to me suffer from mental health. People very close to me had suicide attempts. Someone died of a suicide attempt.
Wow.
That it was successful. So I always knew that, at least where, in Venezuela, seeing these things, I wonder, if what are we not doing that can be done? How can we take care of this? What can we do? So I've always wanted to study psychology, but back home, in my hometown, psychology wasn't offered as a major. So my parents said, you know what, it's better if you stay here. And look at where I ended up, right? But they were like, like, yeah, so is there anything else that you would like to study? So as I told you, I came here, I got the scholarship, and ultimately I ended up doing what I wanted to do.
Ending up, and which is what this whole program is about, defining you and going after your passion, following your path, and doing what you love, living the life you want and doing what you love. So it's happy to hear that, you you fit very well on this program, because this program is definitely for people like you to give, your perspective and your insights, and to share your experiences with the audience. And, someone might be, interested in pursuing a career as being a therapist. And, some of the things you share might be, an example of, what are some of the things you can do to put yourself in a position to do what you love. So what would you say is the most rewarding thing for you about being a therapist?
I think the most rewarding thing is having those moments, right, throughout sessions where I can see people lighting up. Like, I can see these connections, I can see these moments, and it's it might be through actual words when people tell me, but it can be something else. It can be, sometimes we don't even need words, but it's when people make these connections, because I feel that life moves so fast.
Yes.
And we, like, as we were talking before, we don't make time for ourselves. We don't prioritize ourselves. So
that is so true.
Making the time, and I love to start the sessions with a brief meditation, a brief exercise. And I always say, okay, can you please thank yourself for making the time to be here? Can you thank yourself for prioritizing yourself for the next 15 minutes? And I love when we are able to make those connections, because I feel, the way I see it is we're gathering data. Yes. We're gathering data, and we're using that to make changes, right? Because I work with people. These people are change makers. These people are powerhouses. But yet they struggle. They are
human beings. Human beings struggle. It doesn't matter how much money you have, and sometimes the more money you have, the more problems you have. So mental health is not something that you can choose and say. Mental health affects everyone. Absolutely. And I am so glad that we have someone like you in that space that is meeting the need, that is really catering to immigrants and women of color, because sometimes we don't get the help that we need. We need more like you. And so I just want to really thank you so much for taking the time to come here and talk about what you do and how you are helping people in the community. Also, for those who are listening who may want to reach out to you online and just talk to you, maybe perhaps about how do I get involved in this field, and could you give me some guidance, or perhaps want to join one of your workshops? Can you give people some information about how they can find you?
So dulceorozco.com. DulceOrozco.com.
Great.
And on Instagram, you can find me as Latina Immigrant Therapist. And same thing on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Latina Immigrant Therapist. That's easy to find. So look her up on social media. Also check her out on the website. Before we go, what's next for Dulce?
Yeah, so recently, and by recently, I mean this past year, I've been working with Latinx employees, or more in the corporate world. So I've held a monthly group with an awesome local organization.
Nice.
And I've realized the need of these spaces. And I realized how much people need to open up, and how much people need to have a space to talk about the struggles of being a person of color, in a workplace, and what does that mean?
Yes.
And I feel this is so important. So
Absolutely.
that's something that I really want to explore. I want to look more into it, because the feedback that I've gotten is we need to make these changes, right? Something that happens, I don't know if I shared. So I have two daughters. They're 6 and almost 4.
What are their names? Let's give them a shout out.
Yeah. So the 6-year-old is Julia. The almost 4-year-old is Helena. And they are my why. And I have to tell you, I get so proud and so emotional when I see, oh, this is the first Latino woman in this position. This is the first Black woman doing this. So there's a part of me that feels incredibly proud, but then there's another part of me that feels this needs to happen now. I don't want my daughter seeing this when they're in their 20s.
Right.
We need to do this
more
now, right? Like, I want this to be absolutely normal when my daughters grow older.
Oh my goodness.
So
yes.
We need to do this. And I feel that that making more spaces in corporations, that's not the answer, right? But I feel it's
a step in the right direction. Yes, I totally agree with you 100%. And I just want to say, you sound like you're making inroads, and you're probably helping to make some of those changes happen. Is there anything that you would like to say that I didn't ask?
The only thing is, I will make an open invitation for all of your listeners really doubting, right? Like doubting, like, should I go to therapy? That's not for me. Like, I'm not crazy, because let's face it, that's something that comes up. Like, you're not crazy. Why would you go?
Right.
What if you try it? What if you try it? What if you give yourself permission to try it?
What do you have to lose? What do you have to lose? Give it a try.
Right? Give it a try, but also give it a try. Look at this as an investment of your time, of your emotions, of your energy, of your money, and really try very intentionally to look for that person that feels the right person for you. It's not easy. I have to tell you right now, it's not easy. But if you're gonna do it, try to, it's funny to me that we would spend all this time looking, online and comparing prices and comparing reviews. And when it comes to choosing a therapist, it's like, okay, that one, right? So please take your time, but what if you do this now? What if you don't wait until you're absolutely feeling horrible in order to look for someone?
Oh my goodness. That is some really good advice. Simple, but very important. You have to take that step. Nobody knows better than you how much help you need. And so I would encourage anyone who's listening to search yourself and seek help when you need the help. There's help available, and you just have to, try and find the information where it is. Go to Dulce's website, follow on social media. If you have questions, I'm sure you can DM her and say you heard on the Defining You podcast, and I'm sure she'll be able to, reach out and have a conversation. So Dulce, this was really good. You have to come back, and we have to probably talk about some things more focused, and you can probably give us some tips on how to handle a specific area. I was listening to you when you were talking earlier, and I'm like, I was listening, I'm like, I was in therapy.
Thank you. I would love to come back. Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
so
thinking
much.
of me and for having me.
Absolutely. Connections. And let's stay in touch. And I wish you all the best. Continue to do what you do. You are in the right, you're heading in the right direction. So thank you so much for taking care of that community that you think you see the need and you're providing the service for people who really need it. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. Thank you.
It was my pleasure.
Absolutely.